Alrighty, welcome to 7.3. So remember, we're still talking about ethnicities here, and I find this a very interesting key issue because we're going to talk about why might ethnicities face conflicts. So we have conflicts everywhere in the world when it comes to ethnicity, so we're going to hit on a few of them. Now, on 7.2, we talked about racism. So that's just specifically people treating others poorly due to race. This is ethnic conflict, as in two ethnicities don't get along, so they're fighting each other for some of these examples for a long time. Some of these examples are actually more recent, but these don't necessarily have to be violent conflicts either, which we'll understand. But good opening map here. So these are the denonyms of people. A denonym is what you call someone. So someone from the United States is an American. So you can see the suffixes for each one of these. So pretty cool, right? I always like this map. So see, Brazilian, so IAN, Russian, IAN, Chinese, so cool, right? Sudanese. In any of these checkered ones, so you could actually have multiple denonyms for that country. So this is Saudi Arabia. So this would be Saudi Arabian or Saudi. So cool, right? So you can pause that, look at that. Really good map. Okay. So new term here, not super new, but nationalism. This is loyalty and devotion to a nationality. So we learned about nationalities in 7.1 where that is wherever you call your home. So citizenship, whatever. So most countries try to increase nationalism, and we'll actually give a few other terms on how we do that. So first term, centripetal force, or if you want to call it centripetal, that's fine. But centripetal, it's actually a science term. It's something that unifies a people and brings support for that state. State meaning country. So a centripetal force brings people together. So I can't think of a better centripetal force than the Olympics. Olympics are always a fantastic example of that. So centripetal force doesn't have to be a sporting event. I mean, it could be an American flag. It could be, a flag of Pakistan. It could be a flag of Australia. It could be a flag of anywhere. Or national songs, national birds. So a lot of what y'all were doing with sovereignty, especially in this quarter, and then actually into third quarter too, you'll see is you're thinking about some centripetal forces. So how you're going to bring your country together. So we'll have a whole class discussion on this, but centripetal, just basic, brings people together. Now, opposite, centrifugal or centrifugal, if that, however you want to pronounce it, but centrifugal. This is the opposite. So this is something that's going to tear apart a country. So centrifugal forces, those could be like war. Those could be political parties. Of course, and we'll talk about this again, whole class discussion, but political parties could be centripetal too, right? It depends if everyone kind of like supports one party. So like communism, which you could argue could be centrifugal too. But centrifugal, I'm thinking like Republicans versus Democrats, where you have bickering back and forth sometimes between those two parties. Now, if you think about some examples of things we've already talked about, you remember the Northern Ireland. So there you could say religion and religious branches were actually centrifugal forces. So a term you'll see quite often on the exam is a shatter belt. So a shatter belt kind of makes sense, but it's an area that's unstable and it's really like a region. So you have opposing political and cultural values within that. So if you think about it, sub-Saharan Africa, so somewhat of a shatter belt. Eastern Europe, somewhat of a shatter belt when the Soviet Union breaks up, and then we're going to talk about when Yugoslavia breaks up too. So due to ethnicities, so anytime you have like conflicts in a region between countries, sometimes even within countries, and there's many of them, then that would be a shatter belt. All right, so centripetal force is good, brings a country together. Centrifugal force is bad, pulls a country apart, and then shatter belt was an area where they would have like a lot of centrifugal forces in essence. So you have a lot of bitterness and bickering back and forth. All right, so with that, so now let's talk about some ethnicity, nationality, and some examples here. So United Kingdom. Oh, very, very confusing. We're actually going to watch one of the Gray videos about the United Kingdom and as far as like explaining it. But I'm going to kind of give you an explanation here, and then you'll understand, hopefully overall, kind of how we look at ethnicity and nationality here. So the country that we're looking at here is United Kingdom. So England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Ireland is a separate country altogether. So if you live in Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales, and you say, what is your nationality? So your country is United Kingdom. So there's a term British, and that would actually work for all of these. So that'd be your nationality. But your ethnicity might be different. If you were born and raised Scotland, so Scotland, that's specifically going to be Scottish ethnicity. So, but you wouldn't necessarily say your nationality is Scottish, but technically you could, and we'll talk about that. But you would say British is a good word for everyone in the United Kingdom. So, from Wales, your ethnicity is Welsh, but you technically would still say British would be your nationality. Now, let's look at just Ireland. So, Ireland's a little different, right? So, not Ireland, not Northern Ireland, sorry. Ireland, specifically, their nationality is Irish, but their ethnicity is also Irish. Because remember now, so Ireland's an independent country. Northern Ireland, ethnicity Irish, or Northern Irish, probably, not everybody, but most people there. But their nationality would be British, because technically that's part of the United Kingdom for their country. Now, England, ethnicity English, and nationality British. You could say English as well, but again, you'll talk about this, that kind of goes to Scotland too. So if you look, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland over here, they have independent flags, but technically they all follow the United Kingdom flag, which is right here. So to kind of give you a overview, remember Northern Ireland, whenever Ireland becomes a country, they decide they want to stay with the United Kingdom. So that's where a lot of the confusion here comes in. But Scotland, and you guys might have heard about this, they voted last year or 2 years ago on whether or not they wanted independence. So they voted no. And they specifically were 55%. So it's really close vote. So if Scotland were to vote yes for independence, then those people, their ethnicity would be Scottish, and their nationality would be Scottish, because then they would be an independent country. So hopefully you're kind of catching on seeing how that works. And you can tell kind of majority of places here are going to vote against independence, but you did have a few little pockets. Now, interesting with Brexit happening and the United Kingdom leaving the EU, the European Union, they think there might be a new push for Scotland to actually vote again. So here's kind of a good graphic to look at. So if you have the British Isles, so the British Isles, if you remember, we said people from the British Isles were coming over to the United States in wave one. If you guys remember that, international migration. So the British Isles are Ireland and United Kingdom, British Isles, all these things. So everything in the circle are the British Isles. Then the island of Ireland is the country or state of Ireland and the northern section, Northern Ireland, which is actually part of the United Kingdom. The British Islands, which is different from the British Isles, they include United Kingdom and Isle of Man, Jersey, and Jersey. So these are islands we just haven't really talked about under, but hence New Jersey, Jersey. Okay. United Kingdom is Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. But technically, Great Britain is just Scotland, England, and Wales. So this is one of those things, too, where you really got to stare at. But you're only looking at two independent countries on this graph, or whatever you want to call it. United Kingdom's one, Ireland's the other. But then you have islands and regions that are a little bit different. So, whew, man, that's a lot of stuff. All right, next thing. So Canada. So Canada, we've learned about. They're our friends to the north. And we've talked about it a few times, but Quebec over here, Quebec is a province of Canada, but they're predominantly French, so they're French Canadians. So they are a group within Canada that isn't necessarily like the rest of Canada. Now, there have been a couple times in history where Quebec has voted for independence. So, which the question is, so Quebecois, that is what you would call someone from Quebec, Quebecois. So go ahead, you can practice that one. Some of you are like, what's that mean? So it was Quebecois nationality. Well, no, because whenever Quebec voted for independence, they voted no. But is Quebecois an ethnicity? Yes. So Quebecois could be a French Canadian ethnicity. So if you ever heard of like Montreal, Quebec itself, the city, those are cities within Quebec. So that's another great example of an ethnicity within a country that is not necessarily a nationality, even though they're a different group in that country from other groups in that country. So we got the United Kingdom, we have Canada for two good examples. We're going to talk about later on. Spain, actually, in the last couple of weeks, what they have done is Catalonia, which is the region that has Barcelona in it. In 2017, they kind of had some bitterness between Catalonia and then the rest of Spain. And Catalonia said, "Well, we're a separate culture, we're a separate ethnicity. We're going to break away." And there's kind of been some bickering back and forth with them there. So next one, India and Pakistan. So kind of a long story here, but we're going to shorten it a little bit. So the British, they ruled what they called the subcontinent of India for a long time. So they colonized what is now India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, that region. So the British in 1947, they leave. Now, normally, what happens is whenever a colonizer leaves, many a times they will help that government, that new country, those newly independent people kind of start and learn how to govern themselves. The British did not do this. So the British just left in 1947 and were like, see ya, and they said, all right, y'all, so have fun. And they made two separate countries. This is called the partition. So even if you just Google partition, probably India and Pakistan in 1947, it's going to pop up. So what the British did, and kind of like the government of the world, is they made two countries. They made India, then they made Pakistan, but Pakistan was actually separated. So what is now Pakistan was West Pakistan, and what is now Bangladesh was East Pakistan. So, follow me here. So the same country divided into East Pakistan and West Pakistan with India right in the middle. So, another thing that the British did not do is when they drew these boundaries, they didn't really take into account who lived where. So this specific event, this is the largest migration in what we think of in all of history. So people lived in India and they were like, wait, we're Muslim. We don't want to live in India because a lot of these people are Hindu. So they migrated to the Pakistans, which is, now Bangladesh. But the majority of people went to modern day Pakistan, which was West Pakistan. Well, Hindus that were living in Pakistan were like, wait, time out. If now this country is going to be predominantly Muslim, we don't want to live here. We want to live in India because we are Hindu. So those people went to India. So if you look at this is flow in millions. So look at these millions and millions of people who migrated. So 5.3 million Muslims went to Pakistan from India. Remember now, South Carolina is about 4.6 million people. So all of South Carolina, plus some more, went to Pakistan. So that number really puts it into perspective. So we're gonna watch this video. This is linked to in class, but it's actually something really cool that now between the India and Pakistan border goes on. So there was some bitterness between India and Pakistan, and it kind of has calmed down since. But just remember, so the British leave, and they draw those two new countries, and that creates, again, in essence, a huge, maybe the largest migration of humans in history. So it's big. All right, click that map later. So now another group. So this isn't a group that's an ethnicity. They're called the Kurds. They live in a region called Kurdistan. You can see this here. Now, Kurdistan is unique in the world because it's actually divided into multiple countries. So Kurdistan is not an independent country, although they would love to be an independent country, but they are not. But majority of Kurds live in Turkey. But you see you have some in Syria, and we're familiar with what's going on in Syria, right? That's not a good situation. Northern Iraq as well, and some in Iran. And actually kind of have some up here in Azerbaijan and Armenia as well, but you have more in these bigger regions. So Multiple countries have the Kurds that live in them. Iraq is actually the country that allows them the most independence. They allow this northern portion to kind of govern themselves, but the Kurds would, or a specific ethnicity, would love to be their own country, but they are not. So their nationality is wherever they live. So if you live in Turkey, you would technically be a Turk or Turkish, but your ethnicity would be Kurd or Kurdish. So there's another example. We'll talk about them later on when we get into our next unit. Now, look at this. So these are ethnicities in Asia. So you can see this orange area over here, that's the Kurds that we just talked about. But look at all these different ethnicities. So we have a term, again, we're going to learn that in the next unit. Well, technically 2 units, unit 6. We're going to talk about, well, not next unit, next chapter. I'm sorry, why did I say unit? So chapter 8, we're going to learn what you call these countries. So you see a lot of these countries have different ethnicities within them. So we have a term for if you have a bunch of different ethnicities, you have a term if you have one ethnicity, so we have different terms for multiple different things. But you can see that this is one reason where you might have some conflicts in these countries, especially in Afghanistan. Remember, Afghanistan had the Taliban who was behind the 9/11 attacks. Look at Afghanistan. That's one reason why they don't necessarily get along within that country, because you have multiple ethnicities that live in there. So a lot of examples there for you as far as bitterness between ethnicities. So this, again, like 7.2, wasn't a super long recording, but lots of important information. All right, one more key issue to go in Chapter 7. I will see you in 7.4.